Good evening, and welcome to Immigrant Issues, hosted by the Chicago Legal Clinic. I'd like to welcome you and our wonderful guest tonight, Edyta Salata, who is in private practice and also is a fellow attorney with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Welcome, Edyta. Welcome back, I should say.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So we're going to be talking a variety of topics, from everything from dealing with delays in processing to the new rules dealing with different types of student visas, all kinds of topics, because everything is changing, and I'd like to say that it's changing for the better, but it certainly is becoming more difficult. If you have a question during this broadcast, please do not hesitate to contact the number on the screen, 312-738-1060, for questions, and we'll be happy to try to answer them. So before we get into talking about our favorite topic, which is immigration, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chicago Legal Clinic. The Chicago Legal Clinic was founded in 1982 by two brand new lawyers. And the reason it was founded was because South Chicago used to be the place where they had a lot of steel mills. But the steel mills started closing in the 70s, and by the time the 80s came around, a lot of shops had gone out of business because there were no clients, people had moved away, and there were no low-cost services available for the people who lived there. So the Chicago Legal Clinic originally was called the South Chicago Legal Clinic for Immigrants, was established to try to bring legal services to the people in that area. Well, eventually an office was opened in Pilsen, where I work, and then Austin and downtown. And today, many years later, there are the 4 offices, plus there are offices in the Daily Center that give free legal advice on issues such as foreclosure, name changes, child support. And there's also a clinic at Harold Washington College where I teach that helps students, people who are at the college. If you have a question that deals with not only immigration, but foreclosure, child support, you want to buy a house or sell a house, you have a problem dealing with Social Security for people with disabilities, please call the Chicago Legal Clinic at 773-731-1762. The number is on the back, 773-731-1762, between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and we will try to assist you with the problem. I also need to mention right now, and I think Edyta would probably agree with me, to be careful out there right now, especially in dealing with immigration, that you, first of all, don't do anything what I would come to say is not very wise. Don't do anything stupid like drink and drive, but also be careful where you get advice from, because a lot of people around here will go shopping for advice, and the person that tells them what they want to hear, they will go with, and that may not even be a lawyer. So again, notaries are not lawyers here. Neither are people who fill out tax forms. They are not lawyers. They cannot give legal advice. They should not give legal advice. And you, not they, will be the ones to suffer. So now I'm going to talk a little bit in Spanish, and then we're going to jump into the invisible wall. So Edyta will be explaining about the wall. So, buenas tardes, me llamo Carolina Schoenberger y quiero decirle un poco de la Clínica Legal de Chicago. La Clínica Legal de Chicago fue establecida en 1982 por 2 nuevos abogados que querían ayudar a la gente del sur de Chicago, porque antes de 1980 había muchas acerías en el sur de Chicago, pero se cerraron las acerías y la gente que trabajaba en la acería perdieron sus trabajos. También los negocios en el sur de Chicago sufrieron por la falta de clientes. En este barrio no había ninguna oficina legal ofreciendo ayuda legal a bajo costo. Entonces, los 2 abogados establecieron la Clínica Legal de Chicago en un solo cuarto. Actualmente hay 4 oficinas de la Clínica Legal de Chicago, uno en el sur de Chicago, uno en Pilsen, donde yo trabajo, también en Austin y en el centro. También hay varias oficinas en las cortes, en el Daily Center y Markham, otras cortes, que ofrecen ayuda legal gratis a la gente con problemas de mantenimiento de los niños, foreclosure, bienes raíces, si quería cambiar su nombre. Hay también una oficina en Harold Washington College, en donde soy profesora, que ofrece ayuda legal gratis a los estudiantes. Si tiene un problema legal como inmigración, violencia doméstica, bienes raíces, seguro social para gente en capacidad o testamentos, hay de llamar al número central de la Clínica Legal de Chicago entre las horas de 9 de la mañana hasta las 5 de la tarde, los lunes hasta los viernes. Llame al 773-731-1762. El número está abajo de nosotros, 773-731-1762. También quiero decir, hay de tener cuidado ahora. Hay mucha gente que está asustado y yo soy ciudadana, también yo tengo nervios de lo que está pasando. Primeramente, no haga nada tonto, no bebe, no maneja. Si quería conseguir aviso, tengas cuidado. No hable con un notario sobre cosas legales porque aquí un notario no es un abogado. Y usted va a sufrir, no el notario. Entonces, yo sé que hay mucha gente que vaya a uno tras uno porque no le gusta lo que el abogado dice. Tenga cuidado. So, ahora vamos a hablar en inglés, pero si tiene preguntas, llámanos, si no hoy, llámanos en la oficina. Gracias. Okay, so with that, welcome again, Edyta. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much.
So what is the invisible wall? Let's talk a little bit.
Well, since the president has not yet obtained the 25 billion in funding to finish up the big, beautiful wall along the U.S.-Mexico, we are, as immigration attorneys and as immigrants who are seeking to obtain immigration benefits, facing a different type of wall, an invisible wall, which I think can be more detrimental to our interests compared to the actual wall that maybe sometimes gets more press.
Well, what absolutely drives me crazy is when someone says, why can't they do it the right way? Our clients are trying to become citizens, trying to become residents, bring loved ones. They're trying to do it the right way. And yet they're encountering
Correct.
terrible resistance. Just as an example, delays. Can you give some example of delays?
Right. So one obstacle on the way of doing it the right way would be the processing times on the applications that are being filed. So looking at the most frequently filed petition, for example, petition for naturalization and 400, the processing times are about 11 to 15.5 months. Those are the processing times that are posted for Chicago.
So someone who
local
wants to
office.
become a citizen they put in the papers, they have to wait up to 15 months to get an interview to become a citizen.
Correct. And then in turn will impact their ability, for example, sponsor their children. Some of the children might age out before that person
Get too old to be.
correct. And it gets more complicated, in terms of aging out. But again, 15 months or 16 months of a processing time is a very long delay. Adjustment of status. So let's say
That's the process of someone actually getting a green card inside the United States. You adjust your status.
correct. So those applications are based on family categories are processed here on Chicago. Again, the processing times run anywhere from 11 to 29.5 months.
29 point over almost 2.5 years.
So it's very difficult, I think, to plan, and then you have to deal with renewing employment authorizations, which are also delayed, are taking more than the standard 3 months that they used to in most of the cases previously before this administration took charge. We are looking also at I-90s, which is your application to renew your permanent residence card. We are at a year of the processing times.
I mean, that's just incredible that someone's trying to do it the right way and it's taking this long. So if someone's employment authorization terminates and is taking this long, can they work?
If the employment authorization is expired, many times what's going to happen is the human resource personnel will contact that employee and will advise them of the fact that they can no longer work. And now whether or not that person is authorized to work pursuant to their status depends on the category. So we might have a situation where they, they won't be able to. There are some categories where they will not be in violation of the status, but it's important to make sure that since every classification has different rules that apply, to consult with, know the law, to consult with an attorney before.
Well, one of the things when someone is applying to renew their green card and they want to go out of the country, we tell them to go downtown to the Immigration Service to get a stamp in their passport so they can travel.
And that's very important when you're dealing with those delays. For example, another category is removal of the condition on permanent residence. So that happens, when you obtain a green card pursuant to a marriage, and it's a short marriage, that you haven't been married for that long, and you have received only the conditional green card for the first 2 years. And the processing times on 751, which is application used to remove this condition, are 19 months. So
Oh my God.
chances are that, it's a guarantee that, once you receive this first notice renewing that permanent residency for a year, then that validity of that notice will lapse before the processing times are up, right? So it's very important to keep track of those dates, and, before traveling abroad, this person should make sure that documents are correct, because it's not going to be a problem to exit the country. However, the re-entry could be problematic if we don't have a stamp in a passport extending that validity. And they usually, that category will qualify for a 6-month extension on extension until the validity of the passport.
Now, we try to tell people, if you have to leave, make sure that you have the stamp.
Correct.
Because if you don't, you're going to have a rough time getting back in.
Definitely. And particularly in situations where an applicant is not a permanent resident. So let's say we're not removing the condition, we're not applying for naturalization, but let's say we are in a process of applying for that first green card. Leaving the country without re-entry permit, without authorization, will equal to abandonment of the application. So that applicant might be facing the need to file another application and then consular processing.
So I think a lot of people don't realize that we're not talking about someone paying a fine. We're talking about whether someone can continue to live here. So that's why it's so important to get good advice, because you may make a mistake, and that mistake is going to be with you for a long time. The other thing, and this is something I consider to be a form of harassment, is we're getting a lot of requests for evidence and notices with intent to deny petitions for no reason at all. So let's talk about that. Have you gotten some strange requests for evidence?
Most recently, particularly on applications, for example, the category in my office that I have been watching are a removal of the condition on permanent residency, where my internal statistics show about, 70-80% of RFEs asking for the exact documentation that was already provided. So that's one category. The other thing that I notice is, I think, this idea of prosecuting every case and any potential violation to the maximum, extent allowable by law. So, for example, I was working on a case where my client was accused of being in a marriage before he got married to his first spouse, based on a mistake on a deed. And we were forced to prove the negative. the proof that that applicant was single, which was sort of difficult to do
Sure.
because you can't really, and there's no really a document which will confirm that
We've
that
got
status.
This week we got 3 notices for fingerprints. Clients live here in Chicago. One was supposed to go to Minnesota, one was supposed to go to Texas, I think Houston, and the other to San Francisco. And it's like, what is going on here? So we've instructed our clients to go to the fingerprint, the biometric centers, with a notice and ask, could we please do this here? But there's been just a lot of things, and we don't really understand why it's happening.
Right, and having said that, I think still important because even if that request is not really making much sense in the context of information or the type of application, it's still important to respond because if you don't, then your case will definitely get denied. So.
Well, that's the thing, to respond and not just pretend it's going to go away. Another big change that's coming down, and we're not completely sure what's going on, is in the area of public aid. You have to show when you want to bring someone here or help someone here become a resident that they're not going to be put on public aid, so you sign what's called an affidavit of support. Apparently they're now changing it, that instead of that being demonstrating that there are the financial means to support the person, now it's supposed to be just one factor. What are some of the other factors that now officers can consider?
So in terms of making determination whether or not an applicant could potentially be so-called public charge, meaning that they would rely on the government for assistance while residing in the United States, the officer can consider cash benefits that an applicant is receiving. So those would be food stamps, for example, or
The children are receiving. The children of the applicant are receiving.
for example. So in terms of looking at the old system, the officer was sort of limited here to looking at cash assistance and maybe situation where somebody was receiving subsidies for a stay in a hospital or hospice. However, there is a push now or proposed change that where they could consider any kind of benefits to the applicant, to applicant's children, and for example, health and nutrition programs such as Medicaid or SNAP benefits, all sorts of benefits that either the applicant or the kids are receiving.
What I don't completely understand is that if you are a citizen, you're entitled to receive those benefits, and why would they penalize the parent?
So again, I think you're coming back to this idea of building the invisible wall, of finding ways in which you can prevent people from legalizing their status, prevent people from obtaining the benefits, and the shift from being an agency, from CIS or USCIS being an agency that provides certain type of benefits to applicants who qualify, to an agency that is sort of defending the U.S. Citizen, the public from the threat that
That someone who's,
the perceived threat of the foreign resident, I guess.
yeah, no, it's a very sad thing. And I just want to basically mention very briefly, the last couple days, we've both seen changes in some of the student visas, the F visa for an international student, I guess that the M visa that deals more with the technical area, and the J visa, which I think is work related to a large degree. And my understanding, and again, I haven't really studied this as much, is that with any of those visas, if you're not authorized to work and they find you working, you're going to get deported. That's definitely true of the F and the M visa. J visa, generally you have permission to work. But I understand that you start to get into the area, there's no grace period. When your visa ends, you're supposed to leave. And that the period where you would have what's called an authorized presence, where you literally could be deported, starts when the visa ends. That's my understanding.
And that's my understanding of those new regulations as well. So I guess for anyone in that particular category, it will be important to keep in touch with the International Student Office and be up to speed on the regulations and the plans and the duration of the program and what type of employment am I authorized to exactly perform, where, and not to, for example, engage with side jobs.
I know that there are cases where that happens, and I do know of a case of a student who was at a very major university in the East, and when they went to renew their student visa, they were denied because immigration found out they were working. So there's no waiver for that, and it's very harsh, and if someone's picked up here, they're deported. People don't realize that if you're not a permanent resident, if you're a student, you don't have the right to go before a judge. So we've talked about a couple of topics. We've talked about the delays, we've talked about the new rules, the senseless requests for evidence and notices to deny, and the rules regarding international students that are coming. What advice can we give to clients right now?
Well, my biggest advice would be to, when in doubt, to make sure to seek guidance from either an immigration attorney or an accredited representative, non-governmental agency that deals with immigration law on a daily basis, and educate yourself regarding your rights. Also, make sure that if you do file an application, that you review it carefully. You don't only rely on someone else, and then you provide only information that's truthful and honest in this application. And stay away from anyone that knows a quick fix to your situation, to any know that knows someone who works for government, or they tell you they do, and they can either help you with all those processing times and fast track your case. So take all those claims with a grain of salt, and make sure to educate yourself and find qualified help.
I hear so often, well, I know a guy, and I have to say, if you want, he can come in, I'll be happy to talk with him, but every case is different. I'm sure you heard that too.
Sure.
I know someone. The only other thing that I would add to that is people, in this time of anxiety, if you go to see a lawyer, you have to be very, very clear. You have to tell the lawyer everything. You may not want to tell the lawyer everything, especially if you did something stupid. We've all done something stupid. But if you don't tell the lawyer cannot protect you. And right now, again, a stupid mistake, forgetting to put something down, could literally cost someone, their right to stay here. So that is the only other thing that I can really add. You've seen cases, I'm sure, where someone does something, forgets to tell the lawyer, and we have certain ethical obligations too. We can't let someone lie. So,
for me, that's another way of sort of a wall that one can build themselves,
right.
that stands between them and the benefits, is to manufacture part of your history or biographics, and then press through with an application like this, which somehow has always a way of finding you the way.
We don't know to what degree the government can find out personal information. We know that money that's spent overseas, they can access the amounts, that certainly coming in to the country, that they're looking at cell phones and other
social media from the back end, which is sort of, different.
In any event, I really want to thank you, Edyta, for coming on. Again, if you have questions, Edyta Salata, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and the Chicago Legal Clinic are very happy to try to help you, but please make sure that the advice that you're getting is from someone who is licensed, who has something to lose if they give you fraudulent advice. And please be honest with your lawyer. I can't stress that enough, even if you've done something really stupid. We all have done pretty stupid things. Let's just make sure that at least, we tell the truth. So with that, again, I want to thank you. We will be back next month for another version of Immigration Issues. hosted by the Chicago Legal Clinic. I want to thank you very much, and be safe out there.